The papers arrived this morning, signed by my own son, declaring me unfit to manage my own life. The farm auction is set for Friday, just 2 days from now. I hid the legal documents under my mattress before the hospice staff could find them. I need to get to a phone and call my lawyer before they sell everything. I'm losing my dignity, trapped in this sterile room with its faint smell of bleach and decay. My son showed his true colours when he visited an hour ago. He smiled while telling me the hospice is my new home, his voice smooth as poison. Then something unexpected happened. A young aide slipped me a note when no one was looking, her eyes wide with fear. As I read it, I realized the doctors are paid to keep me sedated. Now the aide is gone, and I hear footsteps approaching my door, heavy and deliberate. I found the phone in the common area, but it was dead, wires cut clean through. I had to find another way out, perhaps through the fire exit I spotted down the hall. The ache in my joints as I move is a constant reminder of my age. My son tightened his grip when a lawyer showed up, demanding I sign over power of attorney, his suit crisp and unwelcoming. Then, a janitor mopping the floors nudged a key toward me with his foot, his gaze darting away. When I pocketed it, I realized it's not for the exit, but for a storage room where old records are kept. Now I hear the lawyer's voice rising, asking where I've gone, and I'm crouched behind a supply cart, heart pounding. The storage room held boxes of patient files, dusty and forgotten. I need to find proof of the conspiracy, something to halt the sale. I risk being caught, my breath shallow in the cramped space. I overheard a call where my son was accelerating the auction to tomorrow. Then I found a file labelled with my name that contained photos of the farm, my husband's grave already marked with survey stakes. I saw that the grave isn't just being buried, it's being excavated for a foundation. Now footsteps echo outside the door, and I'm clutching the photos, unsure if I have time to hide them. I slipped the photos into my sleeve as the door opened, revealing a nurse I've never seen before. I have to get these to someone outside, maybe the mail carrier who comes at noon. Fear gnaws at me, making my hands tremble. My son upped the ante with a new order. I'm to be transferred to a secured wing today. Then the nurse whispered that she's a relative of my late husband, here to help. As she handed me a burner phone, its screen already lit with a number, I understood something new. Now I hear keys jangling, and she's shoved me into a linen closet, her expression urgent. The burner phone has one contact, a reporter who investigated farm frauds years ago. I need to send the photos and my story before the transfer. The stifling heat of the closet makes sweat bead on my forehead. My son showed his hand with an announcement over the intercom. All patients are confined to rooms immediately. Then the nurse returned, her face pale, and said the reporter is dead, killed in a car crash last week. I realized my son's reach is farther than I thought. Now heavy knocking starts on the closet door, and I'm pressing send on the message, not knowing if it will go through. The knocking on the closet door grew louder, each thud echoing in the small space. I had to act fast before they found me and the burner phone. I had to slip out and reach the mail drop-off from earlier tours. But my legs protested with a sharp pain as I shifted. Sweat soaked my clothes, and fear tightened my chest as I moved. My son's voice cut through the hall, ordering a full search of the hospice, his authority absolute. Then, the knocking stopped abruptly, and I heard a scuffle outside. The nurse from before arguing with security, buying me time. As I peeked through the slats, I saw her gesture wildly, drawing them away. I realized she wasn't just helping, she was risking her job for me. Now the hallway is clear, but I hear my son's footsteps approaching from the other end, steady and sure. I darted into the common room, clutching the phone. aiming for the exterior door I'd spotted weeks ago. I needed to get outside and find a signal to send the photos, but every step sent a jolt through my bad knee. The escape brought a growing ache that made me slow and vulnerable. My son escalated things by announcing over the intercom that I was a flight risk, triggering a lockdown. Then, an elderly patient in a wheelchair rolled toward me, his eyes alert, and he whispered directions to a staff exit rarely used. When I followed his nod, I noticed he had a faded tattoo matching my husband's old army unit, a connection I never expected. Now I'm at the exit, but the handle is jammed, and I see shadows moving outside the window. The jammed door wouldn't budge, so I turned back, seeking another way out through the laundry chute I'd heard about. I had to reach the chute and drop to the lower floor, where I might find help. During the detour, I cut my hand, forcing a panel, and blood smeared on the wall. My son escalated things as two orderlies began sweeping the area, their walkie-talkies crackling with updates. Then, the lights flickered and died, plunging the hallway into darkness. A power outage I hadn't anticipated. In the blackness, I felt along the wall and found a loose tile hiding a set of keys labeled maintenance. I understood the outage wasn't an accident. Someone else is interfering. Now footsteps are closing in, and I'm fumbling with the keys, unsure which one fits. I used the keys to open a service closet, finding a map of the hospice's underground tunnels. I had to navigate them to reach the outside before the auction starts at dawn. The damp cold seeped into my bones, making me shiver uncontrollably. My son made his move by sending a text to all staff, my photo with a warning, "I'm dangerous." Then, a voice called out from the shadows. The janitor who'd helped me earlier, urging me to follow him to a safe route. As we moved, he revealed he's been documenting abuses here for years, and he has evidence against my son. I saw that my son's greed extends beyond the farm. He's involved in other schemes. Now we're at a tunnel exit, but it's blocked by a collapsed section, and I hear voices behind us. The blocked tunnel forced us to backtrack, and I needed to find another path or use the janitor's evidence immediately. I sacrificed my last bit of energy, my breath coming in ragged gasps. My son's final play came through a call on the janitor's radio. The auction has been moved up, happening in just an hour. Then, the janitor handed me a flash drive with all his files, saying he'll distract the pursuers. As I took it, I noticed a photo on it showing my son with the hospice director, exchanging cash in the very room where I was declared incompetent. I realized the director is in on it too, not just the doctors. Now I'm alone in the tunnels, the flash drive in my pocket, and I see a light ahead. But it's not an exit. It's someone with a flashlight, waiting. The flashlight beam fixed on me, and I froze against the damp tunnel wall. The auction begins in under an hour, and I must get this flash drive to someone who can stop it. My legs trembled from exhaustion, each breath a sharp reminder of my age. My son's voice crackled from a radio nearby, directing searchers to my last known location. Then the light lowered, revealing the nurse from before, her face strained but determined. She gestured for silence and led me to a narrow side passage I hadn't noticed. As we slipped inside, she whispered that the hospice director is on his way down here personally. I realized the director isn't just complicit. He's the one who arranged the false competency exams. Now we're crouched in the dark, and I hear the director's voice echoing down the tunnel, demanding I be found immediately. The nurse shoved a set of old blueprints into my hands, pointing to a route that leads to a ground-level vent. I need to follow it to reach the parking lot where I might find a car or a passerby. The cramped space made my back ache, and dust filled my lungs with each gasp. My son tightened the net by announcing a reward for my capture over the radio. his tone cold and businesslike. Then, the nurse suddenly stiffened and pushed me behind a stack of crates, her eyes wide. She mouthed that she saw the director with a weapon, a small handgun tucked in his waistband. I understood the danger is more physical than I thought. They're willing to harm me to silence this. Now the crates are shifting, and I see a shadow fall over us, too close to run. The shadow belonged to the janitor, his face pale as he signaled us to follow him through a hidden panel in the wall. I had to trust him and reach the vent before time runs out. The panel scraped my arm, leaving a fresh cut that stung in the cold air. My son escalated by calling in external security, their heavy boots now audible in the tunnels. Then, the janitor stopped and showed me a live feed on his phone, the auction site where bidders are already gathering online. As I watched, I noticed my son standing near my husband's grave, which was covered with a tarp, ready for demolition. I saw that he's not just selling the farm, he's overseeing the desecration himself. Now, an alarm blares overhead, and the janitor swears, saying the vents are now monitored. The alarm meant I had to abandon the vent plan and find another way out, perhaps through the old boiler room the blueprints showed. I needed to get to the surface and transmit the flash drive data. The noise grated on my nerves, making it hard to think straight. My son made his move by sending a false medical alert about me being violent, turning any potential helpers against me. Then, the nurse tugged my sleeve and pointed to a grate on the floor, a forgotten sewer access. When we pried it open, the smell of decay rose up, but it led outside. As I climbed down, I felt a crumpled photo in my pocket from the flash drive files, my son and the director at a bank, withdrawing large sums years ago. I realized this scheme has been planned long before my husband died. Now I'm descending into the dark, and the grate slams shut above me, trapping me below. The sewer was pitch black, and I fumbled for the flashlight the nurse had handed me. I had to follow the tunnel to its end and emerge near the road to flag down help. The muck soaked my shoes, and the cold seeped deep into my bones. My son's final pressure came through a broadcast on the local news, a story painting me as mentally unstable and a danger to others. Then, my flashlight beam caught a glint ahead. A small, dry alcove with a rusted ladder leading upward. When I climbed it, I found it opened into a storm drain near the hospice's perimeter fence. As I pushed the cover aside, I saw a police car parked across the street, its lights off. I understood my son has involved the authorities, framing me. Now I'm exposed in the open, and the police officer steps out, his hand resting on his holster. The police officer stepped toward me, his hand resting on his holster, and I knew I had to convince him I wasn't a threat before he took me in. I needed to show him the flash drive and explain the conspiracy, but my voice trembled as I spoke, and the cold air made my joints stiffen. My son's influence showed when the officer's radio buzzed with a description of me as armed and unstable, his eyes narrowing in suspicion. Then, the officer's posture relaxed slightly, and he muttered that he remembered my husband from local veteran events, his tone shifting from authority to curiosity. As he listened, I pulled out the flash drive, and he glanced at it, then back at me, his expression unreadable. I realized he might be weighing his duty against the truth. Now he's reaching for his handcuffs, but he pauses, looking over my shoulder where headlights are approaching fast. The headlights belonged to a black sedan speeding toward us, and I had to get away before it reached me. I aimed for the wooded area behind the hospice where I could hide and maybe find a way to town. Branches scraped my face as I ran, and my heart pounded in my ears, each step a reminder of my age. My son tightened his grip by sending a text to the officer, a fake order to detain me at all costs. Then a figure emerged from the trees, the janitor, gesturing urgently toward a hidden path he'd cleared. As I followed, he whispered that he'd disabled the hospice's external cameras to buy time. I saw that he's been planning this for longer than I knew, with tools and maps stashed in the woods. Now we're crouched behind a thicket, and I hear voices spreading out, searching the area with flashlights. The janitor led me to an old shed deep in the woods, where he had a laptop set up to access the flash drive. I needed to upload the evidence online before the auction goes live in minutes. The shed's damp floor chilled me to the bone, and my fingers fumbled with the USB port. My son escalated by launching a live stream of the auction, his voice booming as he welcomed bidders to the farm. Then, the laptop screen flickered and died. The battery was dead, and there was no power source nearby. As I frantically searched for a solution, the janitor pulled out a portable charger from his bag, but it was only half full. I understood time is slipping away, and every second counts. Now I hear dogs barking in the distance, getting closer, and the janitor's face goes pale. The barking meant tracking dogs were on my scent, and I had to move now or be caught. I decided to head for the main road and flag down a vehicle, risking exposure for a chance at help. Running made my chest burn, and I stumbled over roots, scraping my knees raw. My son's final move came through an update on the auction. The bidding had started, and the first offer was already high. Then, a car slowed on the road ahead, and the window rolled down to reveal the nurse from the hospice, her eyes wide with urgency. She yelled for me to get in, saying she'd stolen a staff car to aid my escape. As I climbed in, I noticed the car's radio was tuned to the auction broadcast, my son's voice smug and confident. I realized he's so sure of victory he's broadcasting it publicly. Now we're speeding away, but I see a police car pulling out behind us, lights flashing. The nurse drove recklessly, aiming for the farm to confront my son before the sale is final. I had to get there and stop the auction physically, but the car's jolts aggravated my old injuries, pain shooting up my spine. My son upped the ante by having his security detail lock down the farm gates, their shadows visible in the distance. Then, the nurse swerved onto a dirt road, avoiding the main entrance, and pointed to a back fence I used to repair years ago. As we approached, I saw the fence was broken in one spot, just wide enough to squeeze through. When I looked closer, I noticed fresh footprints leading toward the grave. Someone else is already here. I understood I might not be the only one trying to stop this. Now we're out of the car, and I hear raised voices from the auction site, but a hand clamps down on my shoulder from behind. The hand on my shoulder tightened, and I whipped around to face the person behind me. I had to identify them quickly and decide if they were friend or foe before the auction concluded. My heart raced, and the old injury in my shoulder flared with pain from the sudden movement. My son's voice carried from the auction site, announcing the final bids were coming in, his tone triumphant. Then, the grip loosened, and I saw it was the elderly patient from the hospice, the one with the army tattoo, his eyes sharp and clear. He whispered that he'd followed us to help, having overheard my son's plans for years. As he spoke, he pressed a small device into my hand, a voice recorder with conversations between my son and the director. I realized he's been gathering evidence longer than anyone, playing the confused old man to avoid suspicion. Now shouts erupt from the auction crowd, and I see my son pointing directly at us, his face contorted in rage. The elderly patient, Tom, he said his name was, pulled me toward the cover of a nearby tool shed. I needed to use the recorder to expose my son live, but the shed was cramped and dark, making it hard to breathe. My son escalated by sending 2 security guards toward us, their footsteps crunching on the gravel. Then, Tom pointed out a small window facing the auction stage where a projector screen was set up for bid displays. As I watched, he fiddled with the recorder and connected it to a portable speaker he'd brought. I saw that he'd planned this intervention, knowing the auction would be broadcast. Now the guards are rattling the shed door, and Tom is fumbling with the wires, but the speaker lets out a loud screech, drawing everyone's attention. The screech from the speaker made the auction crowd turn toward the shed, and I had to play the recording before we were overpowered. I pressed the button, but nothing happened. The device was jammed or out of power. Frustration boiled inside me, and my hands shook from the cold and fear. My son seized the moment by shouting that I was causing a disturbance, urging the bidders to ignore me. Then, the nurse from the car rushed over and slapped a backup battery into the recorder, her movements swift and sure. As the voices of my son and the director filled the air, discussing my incompetence and the farm sale, I noticed the crowd's murmurs growing louder. I understood the recording is clear enough to sow doubt, but not everyone can hear it over the chaos. Now my son is storming toward the shed, and the security guards are forcing the door open. The shed door burst inward, and I had to escape through a back panel Tom had shown me. I needed to reach the stage and confront my son directly. But the panel was stuck, and I scraped my palms trying to pry it loose. My son's rage showed as he ordered the guards to seize me, his voice cutting through the recording still playing. Then, the janitor appeared from the crowd, throwing something that caused a distraction, a smoke flare from the hospice supplies. As grey smoke billowed, I saw the auction attendees scattering, and the bidding screen flickered off. I realized the janitor had cut the power to the broadcast, buying me time. Now I'm crawling through the panel into the open, but my son is already there, blocking my path with a cold smile. My son stood between me and the stage, and I had to get past him to address the crowd and halt the sale. The smoke made my eyes water, and I coughed, my body aching from the strain. My son tightened his control by producing a document, a forged will he claimed gave him sole rights to the farm. Then, a woman stepped forward from the dispersing crowd. A local reporter I recognized from years ago, her camera raised. As she started filming, she shouted questions about the recording and the document. I noticed my son's confidence waver, his eyes darting toward the director, who was slipping away. I understood the reporter is here because the janitor must have alerted her earlier. Now my son lunges for the camera, but the reporter stands her ground, and I hear sirens approaching in the distance. The sirens wailed closer as my son lunged for the reporter's camera, his face twisted in fury. I had to ensure the recording of his confession was preserved and played for the authorities before he could silence it. My lungs burned from the smoke, and a sharp pain shot through my side with every movement. My son escalated by shouting to the police that I was dangerous and mentally unstable, his words calculated to turn them against me. Then, the lead officer from earlier stepped forward, his eyes locking with mine, and he motioned for his team to hold back. As he approached, he quietly asked if I had the flash drive, his voice low enough that only I could hear. I realized he had been investigating the hospice independently after our encounter. Now my son is advancing again, demanding my arrest, and the officer is caught between us, his hand resting on his radio. The officer's hesitation gave me a moment to speak, and I needed to hand over the flash drive and recorder to him directly. I fumbled in my pocket, my fingers numb from cold and fear, and pulled out the devices. My son countered by producing a document from his jacket, a fake medical report claiming I was delusional. Then, the reporter intervened, live streaming the scene to her news outlet, and the crowd's murmurs grew into shouts of support for me. As the footage went viral, I saw my son's confidence crack, his eyes darting toward the director who was trying to flee in a car. I understood the director was the mastermind behind the paperwork, not just a participant. Now the police are surrounding the director's vehicle, but my son makes a break for the farmhouse, and I have to stop him from destroying more evidence. I broke into a run toward the farmhouse, determined to reach my son before he could tamper with any files inside. The familiar path felt alien under my feet, and my knees protested with each step, reminding me of years spent maintaining this land. My son's last resort was to barricade himself in the study, where he kept the original sale documents. Then Tom, the elderly patient, emerged from the shadows near the porch, holding a set of keys he must have stolen earlier. As he unlocked the back door, he whispered that he'd hidden copies of the real will in the house years ago. I saw that my husband had suspected something and entrusted Tom with safeguards. Now we're inside, but I hear my son smashing things in the study, and the police are closing in from outside. I rushed to the study, where my son was frantically shredding papers, and I had to retrieve the hidden will before it was lost. The room was a mess, and glass from a broken lamp crunched under my shoes, cutting into my soles. My son snarled that it was too late. The auction was voided, but the damage was done. Then, Tom pointed to a loose floorboard under the desk, and I pried it open to find a metal box with the original will and photos of my husband's grave untouched. As I held them, I noticed a letter from my husband detailing his distrust of our son's greed. I realized he had planned for this, leaving clues for me. Now the police enter the room, and my son makes a desperate lunge for the box, but an officer tackles him to the ground. The chaos settled as the police handcuffed my son and led him away, his protests fading into the distance. I stood in the quiet of the study, the will clasped in my hands, and knew I had to reclaim my life piece by piece. The physical toll left me weary, but a deep calm settled over me as I looked out at the farm. My son's pressure had ended with his arrest, and the director was in custody, the conspiracy unraveling. Then, I walked to my husband's grave, the survey stakes removed, and placed a single stone from the field where we'd spent our best years. As the sun set, I felt his presence in the rustling leaves, and I knew the farm was safe, not just for me, but for the memories we built. Now I sit on the porch, watching the stars emerge, and for the first time in years, I breathe without fear.